Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make, ideally, a stupendous amount of money online if things work out the way we plan. My name is Bayc. I am your host for today. I'm joined by my legendary co-hosts, Legendary and Sammy. We have got a fantastic show prepared for you today. It is Friday. We're going to bring the weekend in well. But before we do that, as a reminder, just so you are clear on it, as we have been clear before, we do not know anything for sure. So please do not consider anything that we say as financial advice. The modern market is exceptionally risky, and we do not know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise some of your own judgment. Legendary, with that out of the way, it is Friday. It is the 26th of April. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, doing quite well. Excited for today's show, excited for the weekend, and also excited for my little side quest that I have planned for this afternoon, which is leaving the apartment, getting out on the streets, not to touch grass or anything like that. It's not the time to do that in a bull market, but rather I need to buy a bit of gold, and I need to physically leave that location where I'm in right now, because I don't want to have it shipped to my home, because I want to put it straight into the vault. So little side quest planned for the afternoon.
I like that you're calling daily activities quests.
I like that you're calling buying gold a daily activity.
Well, as in, I was going to say, are you only calling it a quest because it involves gold, or are you also saying things like, my weekend quest is to go and see my parents, or is it only because it's gold?
No, it's only because it's gold. Wouldn't call seeing my parents a quest.
Okay, fair enough. I'm actually arguing for turning everything into some type of quest. Maybe gold is the more advanced quest, but I think that there's scope for other things to be turned into quests as well. Sammy, what is your Friday quest? What are your weekend quests lined up?
I'm actually more curious as to what the reward is for the quest. Is it just the yield on the gold, or is there some sort of and also the moment you said gold, I don't know if it's just this, I've got blast in my mind, but I'm immediately thinking blast gold. How are you having physical blast gold? But my quests this weekend are, I'm heading to Oxford tomorrow, actually, which will be interesting. I've got a mate that's moving to Holland, so send him off well. So probably a few beers. That's my quest.
That's a pretty good quest. I think the quest sounds better because it's Oxford. Like if you'd said another random town in England, it would probably sound quite disappointing. There's something quite quest-like about going to Oxford. A very historical kind of academic place to, I'm sure, be very philosophical and do mysterious quest-like things, right?
Exactly. A lot of academia, a lot of mysterious buildings and things there. So good quest to have.
Very good quest to have. We're going to get into more mysteries in the show today because the ETH NFT market is back and we don't know why. Lord knows why people have decided to buy ETH NFTs again, but they have. And we are going to attempt to explain why. We do have some thoughts, and we're going to get into why there is such an unholy pump across a variety of assets on the ETH side of things, as well as look at everything else that's going on in the NFT market, as well as some very important stuff to do with crypto, MetaMask, Consensys. You might have seen some very important legal stuff going on there. We're going to touch on all those things and more in just a little bit. But before we do that, as always, let's hit the snapshot. As always, it's pinned up top to give you the rundown of all the headlines and the price action. So we'll do that first in just a little bit. I'm going to share it on screen for the people watching in, and I will read it out for the people who are listening in. Let's actually start with some price action first. We have Bitcoin fairly flat at 64K, ETH also just up 1% at 3.1K, and we have Solana at 142. All fairly solid. Crypto's kind of just being very solid at the moment. Definitely want to talk about where we think that type of stuff is going against the backdrop of all kinds of aggressive regulatory action. maybe it doesn't seem to matter anymore. We don't seem to be too phased about it. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But back into the headlines for the day. Number one, SEC serves MetaMask with Wells notice, and Consensys sues SEC to protect Ethereum. The founder of Consensys said this. He said, today, Consensys took an important step towards preserving access to Ether and, by extension, the Ethereum blockchain in the US. We are suing the SEC and fighting back against its overzealous regulatory overreach. So we want to touch on that a little bit. Number two, this is huge news in the last 24 hours. Stripe announces support for global stablecoin payments this summer. They say crypto is back. Stripe will start supporting global stablecoin payments this summer. Transactions will instantly settle on chain and automatically convert into fiat. Very interesting. I want to discuss that, talk about some of the implications there in just a little bit. And finally, and maybe we'll end up starting here when we get into the show after a little bit of discussion, the ETH NFT market rallies aggressively with Yuga assets being the leaders. Bored Apes, I think, went as high as 17 ETH, but are above 16 ETH now. Mutant Apes are above 3 ETH. So just absolutely on fire. More positive price action across the board. I'll share some of that with you here. We're looking at the Mintify chart. We have Captains steady at 3.2, Potatoes at 1.3, Pudgy Penguins up at almost 9% to 12.5 as well. Lil Pudgy's up 15% to above 1 ETH. Moonbirds pumping up 36% to almost 0.7 ETH. I guess it is a Yuga asset now. The Yuga assets are moving. Doodles up 6% to 1.6. DGods, who's announced they're going to leave to go to Solana, also up 14% on ETH to almost 2 ETH now at 1.9. So real strong moves across the board. Bored Ape Kennel Club up 35%, almost to 0.7. Azuki's up 14% as well. So this is not a move exclusive to Yuga assets. The kind of major NFT collections all finding some confidence back in them. Some top sales from around the space. Xcopy run is absolutely continuing. I'm sharing this piece on screen for the people watching in. Xcopy Afterglow selling for 128 ETH. And there's another one of one where I believe there's a collector bidding routinely, like just keeps upping the bid, 200 ETH, 220 ETH. Xcopy stuff is really on fire right now. And another Xcopy edition, the Doomed black and red version, selling for 24 ETH. So interesting to see, great to see. A lot of positive market sentiment for our beloved NFTs, at least on some level. Legendary, that is some of the price action. Those are the headlines, which we're going to talk a little bit later. What is catching your attention on a very green day?
My favorite gaming asset is catching, or one of my favorite gaming assets is catching my attention, probably knowing which direction I'm going to take that. Talking about my own bags, aka Nexian Gems, being up 50%, a bit more than 50% on the day. Wow. Absolutely smashing it at 1.5 ETH. Floor price, as I said it on the show multiple times, you'll never see them for a long time under 1 ETH. They bounce back from that pretty hard. I have been doing so. Obviously not financial advice, not at all. Sure. But quite good to see that the pump, as you said, is not only Yuga assets, it's also gaming, it's also Azuki. It's not restricted to Yuga assets alone, and that's quite lovely to see.
Does this one have a token coming, Legendary? Is that public information? Do we know, like, is there a particular reason why this is so favorably priced?
It has a token coming. They also have the RG bytes. They have notes coming. I think they're working on an L2. There's a lot happening.
Okay.
But you know what I've also been thinking about during that NFT run-up? Because we talked about the idea that we don't agree with the notion that NFTs are pumping at the end of a cycle just because it happened last time. If this is the end of cycle pump, I'd be very sad. But again, I do not think that NFTs are bound to pump at the end of a cycle just because it happened one time in the past. But I'm curious to see how the people who had that theory will now legitimize that and what arguments they will find to still be in the right about their thinking.
That's a great take, actually. I hadn't thought about that because obviously so many people are so convinced that there will be a late stage cycle pump into NFTs. And it's like, well, okay, what's happening here? Is this it? Maybe this is not it, but at least something's happening, right? Are people taking chips off the table as a consequence, or do we think it's going to happen exactly as it happened last time and things just go up and to the right so aggressively? Interesting thought there. Thanks for introducing that. Legendary. Sammy, we are still looking at the Mintify heat map, our NFT marketplace partner. So much green across the board. What's catching your attention? It's something green, something red. What are your thoughts?
It's actually something from yesterday. So we touched on
Okay.
Beeple pumping, and we've obviously mentioned about XCopy being consistently bought up.
Yes.
So Raoul Powell actually posted a tweet shortly after our show saying that he was the one buying all of those. So I've just dropped that tweet in there. But he's effectively just said that these two guys are absolute grails. So I've been accumulating. They're going to be locked up for a long period of time. So it's just interesting to see which artists are being selected. And I think one of his collections were up like 20-30% yesterday. I think a couple were accumulated, so he's added them to his vault.
Fascinating. Okay, I've got a potentially quite hot take on collecting art, and it's hot even for myself. Like it's not, it's quite a negative thing, and it includes me. So I'm kind of going after myself when I say it, but I want to share this take for some context, because I think it'll be interesting. So as you said, Raoul Powell has been really aggressively buying this like digital art stuff. For people who don't know, he runs, let's just check it. I think it's called Real Vision, which is like all kinds of crypto macro media, and has been very successful as a banker trader beforehand. And that's what he's known for. That's how he made his money. So he said, while everyone was busy raiding all the XCopy, I chose violence with Beeple, adding a cheeky 6 more to the collection. Oh, these two artists are the culture of the internet and the single most important artists in the digital space. They are the true OGs and will matter decades from now. People also haven't fully figured out how few Beeple pieces are actually available of this instantly recognizable and utterly iconic artist. These will be locked away for a long time. Okay, interesting stuff. Okay, what did I want to say about this? The take I wanted to make is that I've kind of fallen into this idea with art collecting. I don't know what you guys think, but when people are trying to spend huge amounts of money on art, is it just a way to, particularly in the digital realm, is it just a way to buy attention so that you can go and do something else? Like, as in you leverage all the attention that you get from buying a piece of art so that you can be a more prominent creator, so that you can sell your next product into the market in a better way. Like I started noticing that a little bit in 2021, where the amount of engagement you get, I don't know if you can have any better engagement than when you tell other people who own an asset that you are buying that asset. Like people absolutely love it when you buy their bags. And I just wonder whether maybe this is ultimately what the art world is as well. I don't know. It's something new to me as a collector, because I do collect pieces as well, both digitally and physically now. But I've just started to wonder, like, is this at least a part of the process of collecting where, yeah, maybe you like the art a little bit, but a lot of it is just to signal to other people to get all this attention on you when you are able to say on Twitter that you are apologies, that you're like splashing all this cash on all of these digital collectibles. And then you obviously get all kinds of eyes on you. I mean, we're talking about it right now as well. Legendary, any reflections on this? This is something I've been thinking about from myself after I saw a tweet from Deez where he was like, did you know something? You can, it was something like this. I don't want to butcher the tweet. Did you know something? You can appreciate the art without buying it. Like you don't need to buy it necessarily if you just appreciate it. Is there something more like about the ego involved in the collection? A variety of ideas there. Definitely want to hear your thoughts.
And you can also buy the art without posting about it, but it's definitely an attention play there, right? It's not like you cannot buy any asset, where that's art, where that's a JPEG, and you decide if you want to post about it and if you don't want to post about it. And if you want to post about it, you clearly aim at something. And I think it's a nice blend. You get an extra bit of attention that you can use for your own good, you are pumping your own bags at the same time. Maybe find another collector who shares the thesis and insta buys because you bought. So there's obviously multiple reasons why you want to do that. I mean, it's been a similar situation if you draw an analogy with the juice. With juice, with MetaStreet, with the MetaStreet founder saving the pudgies, giving out 20 loans, and also conveniently at the same time implementing pudgies as a part of their own product. So it's often a strategic thing, and you can have both. You can have long-term conviction. You can also time that purchase in a way that's convenient for yourself. And why not do it? Because at the end of the day, you're spending a shit ton of money on that. So why not make the most out of it?
Yeah, I completely agree. I just remember even when someone, a good friend actually pointed out to me, they observed this from outside, that when I posted about purchasing my first squiggle, this was like still in the bear market. I think that particular post got the most engagement that I have ever had. Admittedly, it was a well-written post, but I write other good things as well sometimes. But people absolutely loved it. They do like when you buy very expensive things, particularly if it is something that they like too. Oxy, your hand is raised. Would love to bring you in to this conversation, my friend. What are your thoughts on these kind of bigger collectors at this time of the market coming in, really trying to determine like, this is the collection for the future. This is the one that's going to be around for the next few decades. What are your thoughts here? Oh no, I can't hear. I think there's a very big danger that we still have audio issues while I'm in Dubai. Apologies, Oxy. Apologies, everyone. Brad, your hand is raised as well. Give it one go, but I'm not hopeful at the moment, to be honest. Yeah, apologies. Okay. Apologies, guys. I will be back in London on Monday. The show will be back on the road. We'll be able to hear all of our great contributors as well. So that will be back to normal on Monday. So for today, apologies. You'll have to listen to the takes from legendary Sammy and myself. Apologies for that. Sammy, what's your reflection on that? When these kind of big, I guess we're kind of talking about it from a philosophical perspective as a collector, but for these people coming in with like quite a lot of conviction, saying like these two, picking these two are the ones that are going to be around for decades. Do you have any perspective there?
Yeah, I've got a couple of points. I think if you remember back in, I think it was 2021, Visa actually acquired a CryptoPunk for like a pretty insane amount of money. And actually, by doing that, you can effectively, depending on how you account for it, you can effectively write it off as a marketing expense. So there is that angle where you don't look at it as like an asset, but you write it off as an expense in the sense that you're not going to potentially look to recover that, or you're not looking at it as like an appreciating asset. You're looking at it as from an advertising perspective, and that got them quite a lot of clout from the Web3 side of things. Like everyone's like, oh, Visa's coming into Web3. I mean, they have got like, I know someone who's working there, and I know they've got a department that's kind of building those rails, but they're not necessarily advertising what they're building at the moment. And I think just doing that is just kind of like a statement. And then they put, I don't know what happened, like a restructuring or whatever. I don't know if they sold it or whether they still own it, but essentially it's looking at it from a different perspective. Whereas I think true collectors will just collect it for the sake of collecting it. And I think Legendary is right that if you post about it, you're obviously looking for some sort of clout, or there's like an ulterior motive. And I think with businesses specifically, it's probably going to be a marketing play. And we talk about like Matchy doing the Solana meme coin raise, right? Like, I don't know if he necessarily thought that was going to be a profitable trade, but it gets him a lot of attention, and the cost of doing that, I don't know, like attention's expensive to come by. And by posting about big purchases, big acquisitions, or doing things that are risky, you get quite a lot of attention, and maybe that will hinder you from a reputational standpoint at some point if things go wrong. But I do think that a lot of these businesses go through this process of acquiring art pieces just for the clout. I mean, look at 3 Hours Capital with like crypto dick butts and stuff like that. It's just some interesting stuff that people acquire, and I think I can't think of any other reason why you would acquire that. I don't think you think some of them would have an appreciating value. There is some cultural significance, but I think yeah, it depends on what they're buying.
I think it's a really, really good point that you bring up. Like, I definitely think that people who are from a more corporate background would be buying these assets, at least the ones that are more like a membership one. Like CryptoPunks legitimately gets you into a brunch or around the world every single time that there is a conference, it gets you in there. And also, I think that there's still a Discord gets you into that over and over again once you verify your asset. So that is a legit like club that you are joining. And I think that there is that kind of business perspective. I remember back in 2021 as well, and this is something I would look out for, is people coming in and sweeping all kinds of stuff, getting loads and loads of attention, and then launching their own project, basically. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Legendary, you remember as someone who used to like the art side of things, 888, the collector, like was buying all kinds of stuff for a really, really long period of time and then launched their own thing. And so it's just a brilliant way to galvanize a community, because you buy everyone's loyalty, basically, because you buy so much stuff. Not only do you buy the people's loyalty who you actually make those purchases yourself, but then the people who are hopeful that you'll buy their work kind of come out of the woodwork and like want to be near you because you are splashing the cash, and they want to be part of that splash. And then you can then you launch a thing, right? And people want to be near you because they think that in the hope that you'll be able to, you know, in that that cash might find its way to them in some level. Interesting. Any final reflections there, Legendary? I thought that would be
absolutely. I like how you say with 888 that after they had collected so much stuff, they launched their own thing, when in essence they sold the inner circle passes, fucked off, and essentially rugged everyone by doing that. That's maybe a bit of nuance there. But in a more positive example, we've seen that with Frank as well. When Frank moved to ETH first, he did buy a shit ton of assets across all communities.
Oh yeah.
With the pure and sole intention to just buy goodwill across all of those communities.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it worked out from the attention perspective. One final question on that, and I told you that before the show, that yesterday evening I had a bit of a laugh when I was looking at the YOLO spins, and I suddenly saw that the modern market, someone with a modern market profile picture, was winning a couple of those spins. So if you're playing and using the modern market's X account to play YOLO, B-check, is that a marketing expense for the modern market? And how do we treat winnings from YOLO on the modern market account?
That is a good question. Sammy will be looking into that as our resident accountant. I hadn't really thought about it from the marketing perspective entirely, but to see the modern market in the mix, in the YOLO spins, I think it's serving its purpose. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, interesting stuff. I want to get to some comments here. We have where are we? We've got Stan Solas on YouTube saying Stan Wawrinka bought a Bored Ape, then launched their own project. 2021 was really a crazy time, wasn't it? It was like you buy one asset, launch your own project, leverage all the attention, and then kind of just completely move on. I think that happened a few times on X. In the comments, we've got Bread Guy who said, I think people do it for clout, but this is the same narrative for ordinals. Interestingly, it's kind of putting the attention on ordinals. We forget how many people believe in Ethereum over ordinals. People call Bitcoin the mother chain as if all digital assets should be there. But there are massive amounts of people who actively dislike proof of work, don't believe in non-programmability, and or think Ethereum's upside is higher. I think Ethereum is more sound than Bitcoin, full stop. If I'm buying something that I want to be lasting and on the chain with the most wealth, I think that's an Ethereum buy. Interesting. I actually think I agree with that, because it kind of it speaks to the way people speak about Bitcoin as the chain with the most wealth, and yet in reality all of these collections are being bought up by people who were on ETH. They're ETH people taking their money across and sweeping everything, and it feels like the party doesn't really start until the ETH people come across. And it speaks to something about like the cultural value living on Ethereum in some way, or at least the cultural value, having the cultural value of valuing this type of art a lot and being willing to pay the top prices. Yes, every chain, a variety of chains has some of these NFTs, but ETH were the first set of people who were like, no, these things are like hyper valuable and we're willing to bid these assets up to a much higher price. Interesting perspectives. Thank you for sharing it on YouTube and on X whilst we cannot hear you because of some technical issues. Very interesting. But I think we should get into the headlines for today. Let's maybe start with Legendary. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with something positive. Actually, we've been having a positive discussion. Let's go into Stripe.
Let's do it. Okay, so maybe let's change the title of the show and break down what's going on with Stripe. This is really big news, I think. So I'm just going to share the screen for the people who are watching in on YouTube and on X, and we'll read it out. So basically, the payments firm stopped taking crypto payments in 2018 due to Bitcoin's high volatility, but they have now decided to bring back crypto payments via USDC stablecoin. So some key points here. They say that Stripe will reintroduce crypto payments later this year, initially only for Circle's USDC stablecoin on Solana, Ethereum, and Polygon. The fintech giant stopped supporting Bitcoin in 2018 during the first crypto winter. 6 years after dropping support for Bitcoin and crypto payments altogether, Stripe is bringing it back now. They say, we're excited to announce we're bringing back crypto as a way to accept payments, but this time with a much better experience. One interesting detail about it was this. They said, yes, it will be done with stablecoins, but transactions will instantly settle on chain and automatically convert to fiat. So that's an interesting little detail. Legendary, what do you think is the significance of Stripe, one of the biggest payment processors, deciding to integrate crypto once again for stablecoins?
I think it's very significant. I mean, you said it perfectly. Stripe stopped doing that in 2018. They actually first experimented with that in 2014. And Stripe is fucking huge. Their transaction volume in 2023 was $1 trillion. That's half the market cap of all cryptocurrencies that they processed in transactions. Now, I'm not going the direction and saying this is going to pump our backs because Stripe brings mass adoption. That's clearly not the case. But just having an institution, and if you think about how big companies work, they might be early to try out something, but they also can be quite fast to shut down a program and be like, nah, that didn't work for us. But for them to actually revisit crypto after such a long hiatus and doing that in a position where they had enormous growth, that's the first time that they did hit $1 trillion transaction volume last year, speaks a lot about the confidence that they have in integrating USDC, because in many big companies, you would rather go like, yeah, no, we tried it again in the past with that crypto thing. It didn't work out. Let's not revisit that. But them doing it again makes it actually even more significant as a piece of news than it already would have been.
Yeah, I think it's just so important. Like, I get a mini heart attack actually when I'm working with US people and they say like, can you wire something over? Because I always think like, oh, does that mean you literally want me to wire it? Like in the more traditional, using the more traditional rails, or can I just send the USDC? Because it's absolutely wild to me that as someone who lives in a country which is, you know, a huge ally to the US, you know, got a huge long-standing history, it's actually so unbelievably painful to do business. Like maybe it's just me because I'm new and I'm setting up, and I suspect people who are more set up and bigger institutions figure out ways much easier, but it is so difficult to receive dollars into your normal bank account, and it's so difficult to like arrange for it to get sent elsewhere. And USDC is just so good. A few other interesting points, which maybe we'll get Sammy to speak to. I wanted to share this tweet from Santiago Santos, who is an investor in the space, who I respect very much. He said, he kind of framed it like this. He said, you're a business, you can get paid and settled instantly with stable coins, paying no commission to credit card issuers and banks, or You cannot accept crypto and continue to struggle being paid and settled in 10 at best, or most likely 20 or 30 days, and pay a cut, 3 to 6% of the transaction value. What do you do? The only reason payments haven't got off the ground as much, especially in the West, is because of proper regulatory clarity. The more use cases powered by stablecoins we build, the more clear it will be that stablecoins are the future of commerce, especially benefiting small and medium-sized businesses and consumers the most. That's exactly what I'm talking about, where it's like, look, we don't have the infrastructure to make sure you've got a particular type of bank and go get dollars to send to real, like, it's just very complicated. Sammy, what do you think about this kind of perspective here on the idea that we should be pushing even more for stablecoins to get integrated to everything way more?
Yeah, I mean, I think this statement's pretty much disintermediation at its finest. You're effectively swapping the middleman's fees for using an automated like chain. So you're effectively swapping it for gas fees, the transaction costs, which will probably be significantly lower, especially if you're using L2s and stuff to settle it. Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be the future, but the regulatory stance, like, I think depends how much lobbying these intermediaries have to prevent it or like slow it down. But the infrastructure is being rolled out. I think we also saw Tether announce that it was, or Telegram announced that it was integrating USD, I think it was USDT, and also gold stable coins. So like, I'm assuming that's like an asset that's back to a stablecoin that's back to the value of gold. And that's going to be rolled out to 800 million users on Telegram. And that kind of flew under the radar. I think that was earlier in the week. So infrastructure is being rolled out. I think it's inevitable. It's just completely down to when these regulators are going to kind of allow it to happen. I mean, but if you look at all the SEC stuff at the moment, there's so much, like, I think Uniswap was a couple of weeks ago, and the news today, and also Samurai wallets, they seem to be in a bit of a vendetta at the moment to try and crack down. So I don't know to what extent this is going to be a seamless process, but I think it will inevitably happen over the next 5 years or so.
Interesting stuff. I like that you kind of bring the conversation into the Uniswap discussion and the kind of bigger crackdown that seems to be happening. There's two things I want to bring up in relation to this, because I think it'll be interesting for people, something that's been on my mind and actually tweeted by DC Investor in the last 24 hours as well. I'm going to link it to that broader crackdown, which Sammy just suggested. I'm going to share the screen. In the last 24 hours, we saw an FBI warning go out. So yeah, that was in the last 24 hours, April the 25th. It said this: the FBI warns Americans against using cryptocurrency, money transmitting services that are not registered as money services businesses, according to federal law. The FBI has recently conducted law enforcement operations against cryptocurrency services, blah, 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 blah. You know the type of story at this point. They're very much trying to discourage people from using cryptocurrency money services. And this seems to be like an official warning from the FBI. The interesting thing as it relates to payment in stable coins, because we're talking about the importance of stable coins, is DC Investor's quote tweet, which is this. He said, "I read this a few times, and my take is get ready for them to freeze stablecoins in a DeFi pool somewhere one day. It is inevitable. They'll try at some point, and all DeFi protocols and users should prepare accordingly." Legendary, my question here is, to what extent do you think this is a real concern for stablecoin users? Obviously, one thing that people think when they think about crypto is, we can get out of the banks. But ultimately, if you think about it, USDC, it's still the money. The money's still backed by the money in the bank. So this is not like proper crypto. It is an incredibly helpful use case. What are your thoughts with this kind of concern of the freezing of stablecoins?
I think it's a very valid concern. Obviously, it's not something that will happen every day, but it's a very valid concern. And I think it's something that we, including myself, tend to at times forget. If you look at Tether can blacklist wallets. That has happened and that continues to happen. And as you said, ultimately, we're using a digital representation of something that is still backed by fiat, and it's not escaping the fiat system, because we are looking at it as its underlying value is still the dollar, right? So yes, I love my stable coins. I have my tax reserves in stables, etc. And sometimes I think about a depegging risk or whatever, but rarely, quite frankly, I think about the blacklisting of wallets, the blacklisting of a DeFi pool maybe, and how that could escalate in DeFi, and how could that potentially cause a liquidation cascade. But of course, yes, it's a real risk, and at one point it probably will happen, like so many other black swan events that we've seen in the space up until now.
Interesting stuff. One of the things I've been thinking about, and this is like definitely not advice in any way, but and also not is probably like overly what's the word, overly cautious. But I just really liked the idea when I learned about Athena a little bit, which was, if you think that one particular type of banking system is either corrupt or becoming more and more damaged and becoming more and more kind of just poorly run and executed, wouldn't it be better if you try to support some type of stable coin which was more crypto native? And my understanding of Athena, and again, like I'm still in that learning process, is that it is not, I mean, the best way to describe it is a synthetic dollar. Actually, it is not a stable coin. A synthetic dollar, which is a product of this kind of background trade that's taking place to create a synthetic dollar. It's like, that's kind of interesting to me. It's very interesting to me to kind of create the dollar without it actually being the USDC in the bank. And that's not only because you think something's going to get frozen or you're up to something nefarious and therefore you don't want that dollar, but it's just kind of interesting. Like, okay, well, now that dollar value is in the hands of like crypto native people, with it being custodied and executed, by Coinbase and Binance and all of these various other people, rather than, the Fed or something like that. So it's just an interesting thought from my perspective. Sammy, I don't know if you have been thinking much about Athena and that from that kind of perspective, or any final thoughts on this before we move on.
Yeah, I think Athena is, I mean, there's some risks in there that are outside of typical stable coins. I think having links to like the perps market and a bit more leverage and stuff like that, you can see why the yields are that much higher. I think it's good that people are experimenting from a decentralized standpoint. But it does concern me about the regulation, because if you look at, I use the BlackRock ETH money market instrument that they deployed on Ethereum. It's basically like, it's backed by money market instruments. So basically like low risk liquid assets, but it's settled on chain. But I think only authorized individuals can actually trade it. I don't know how they are like monitoring that, or like, I don't know if you have to actually have some sort of permission to actually access the fund on chain. I've not tried it, but that's interesting to me. And I think that's probably where I see it coming, where you have like this regulated process where the institutions effectively manage that with their internal systems and controls, but it's compliant with the regulators. So I think that is kind of like the stepping stone, going from like a completely decentralized stable coin to something that is like a traditional security, but it's got some restrictions around how it's traded. And I think that's probably where we'll end up landing with the regulator.
Okay. Interesting stuff. We'll obviously have to just monitor it as we go forward. At least, as we said, at a minimum, stable coins, will be coming, will be being brought forward by Stripe, hopefully making it way, way easier for people to just do business globally. So that is a pro.
It'll be interesting to see though. Like, you've got PayPal, they've issued their stablecoin. I don't know where that's at the moment, but I think it spiked with interest for a period of time, but I haven't checked to see how that's now tracking. It'd be interesting to see how that's doing, because that might be a good indicator of how Stripe might end up doing.
Yeah, potentially. We'll have to take a look. Good point.
Yeah, just to give some data on that, because it's an excellent point. The PYUSD still has an FTV of 300 mil, and if you look at the volume of the last 24 hours, it's actually almost 11 mil. It's 10.7 mil. It is not bad. It's more than I know it's not a big number in crypto, 10 mil in the last 24 hours. But given how early that still is, and given how also when we talked about it, we said that's a multi-year project, if anything at all, and seeing like an 8-figure volume on that over the last 24 hours, if you aggregate that over a year, it's definitely not a bad spot where the PayPal stablecoin is currently in.
Interesting. Thanks for adding that additional information. Let's move on to the Consensys news before we hit the Bored Ape news at the end, crescendoing into that news. Pretty excited about getting a chance to talk about that, to be honest. Right, the Consensys news, I'm going to share the tweet, which kind of puts forth their position so we can read it out and see for the people who are watching in. It says, today Consensys filed a lawsuit against the Securities and Exchange Commission. The goal behind this is to ensure that Ethereum remains a vibrant and indispensable blockchain platform and to preserve access for the countless developers, market participants, and institutions who have a stake in the world's second largest blockchain. These were the two reasons that they gave, just in case you need a couple of reasons to tell the normie friends of yours. Number one, the SEC should not be allowed to arbitrarily expand its jurisdiction. We always have this argument about the SEC going way beyond what they're supposed to do, trying to get involved with all this crypto stuff. Number two, the SEC's reckless approach is bringing chaos to developers, market participants, institutions, and nations who are building on already managing critical systems running on Ethereum. They say Ethereum isn't just about information being permissionless, it's about human ingenuity being permissionless. We encourage others who feel equally aggrieved by the SEC's aggressive regulatory actions to make their voices heard. I think that's sufficient in terms of the information. I don't think we need to spend a huge amount of time on it because in essence, it reads very, very similar to the information coming out of Coinbase when they speak about the SEC and in the case that they're involved. In fact, I saw the lawyer's quote tweet from Coinbase who kind of quote tweeted this saying very similar things. Again, in spirit, I think it's very similar. Legendary, do you have just a quick take here before we move on?
Yeah, one point in particular stood out, namely that they also mentioned not only for market participants does it bring confusion, et cetera, but also nations building on it. And that to me was quite interesting that they made that point, and honestly quite a strong point.
Yeah, okay, I think that's completely fine. Let's move on. Let's get into probably the biggest news, at least from the NFT market side. I want to give it a full 10 minutes in just a moment. But just before we do that, as always, let's hit the Web3 snapshot to get the roundup of what else has been happening in the last 24 hours. As always, this is pinned up top. I'm just going to share it for the people on video. Let's go through it. Number one, Immutable X announces $50 million of gaming reward program. It's pretty outstanding. I think this is going to happen a lot, where people have so much money to throw around and you just incentivize people to come play or participate on your chain. Number two, Movement Labs announces $38 million Series A led by Polychain for Move EVM L2. So another L2 on Ethereum getting funded and people appearing to be quite excited about it on the timeline. Number three, Mochaverse pre-sale is 295% oversubscribed so far with 6 more days to go. That's going to be a pretty big token coming out of the Mochaverse NFT ecosystem. So very keen to see how that plays out, especially because we've been talking about how the market has been struggling with so many tokens coming to launch. Number four, Pantera Capital seeks to raise $1 billion for a new crypto fund. Remember, we were speaking a few days ago about how there was a $750 million fund being raised, and we were wondering what the indicator needs to be to recognize the top. Well, the number keeps getting bigger, guys, so we'll keep an eye on that. Next, Morgan Stanley considers allowing brokers to pitch BTC ETF to customers. And finally, the first Satoshi of Bitcoin's 4th halving block was auctioned for 33.3 Bitcoin, which is over $2.1 million. The Bitcoin ancient whales do exist and care about those type of Satoshis. Final point on Bitcoin as well, Promethean's ordinals by Cyberkongs have risen up to 0.09 Bitcoin now. Pretty outrageously good cook for the people who were airdropped those, I believe, for free. So good for them, bad for me. I didn't get any, so I rage sold all of my ordinals. Okay, final headline for today. We have Bored Apes going absolutely crazy. I would absolutely love, I'm really upset that we can't have any audio today. Would love to have brought NFT Bark and Captain up on stage with us, two long-standing members of the Bored Ape community. If you do have a moment, guys, if you're able to shoot us a comment to the show, would love to get your perspective on like what you think is the rise. But apologies, as we said, like we don't have the we've got some technical issues. We can't hear from you today. But yeah, long-time supporters, long-time advocates for the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Huge rise in the last 24 hours. We've seen it go up as high as 17 ETH, now sitting at 16. I think Mutant Apes are about just over 3 ETH. Sammy, let's go to you first. What are your thoughts here? I shared some thoughts in my newsletter today. What's your take on what's going on, not just with Bored Apes and Mutants, the run across the whole ecosystem, because everything went up today?
Well, I mean, it's been down only for some time now, so I think there is an element of being oversold. The divesting of the HV MTL, so like that business, it makes sense. Maybe that was a bottom signal, and I guess that indicator that it's kind of pumped a little bit off the back of that. It could be something to do with that. Maybe people are a little bit more bullish on the direction that they're taking. I know there was some discussion around some connections with the WEF. I don't know the intricacies of that, but I don't think that would have had too much, because yeah, I don't know. Maybe
the World Economic Forum buying our bags.
Well, maybe the Bored Apes are infiltrating the World Economic Forum. But yeah, I think it's just been oversold for some time. And I think when I saw them at 10 ETH pushing, I don't know if they tipped into 9 ETH, but
they did.
They did. Yeah.
At least on selling into bids.
Yeah, and I think I think Cyrus posted about accumulating 30 odds mutants, and he's generally good at timing the various tops and bottoms, even though I think he sold on the way up. I think there's just like a number of indicators, but it does, like, for me personally, I'm still preferring to stay a little bit more liquid rather than tying up capital into NFTs. Maybe it's like PTSD from buying the last final pump before the last bull market and then kind of being stuck with a load of exit liquidity with my bags. But yeah, I don't know. I think it feels good to see a wave of green. But there is some murmurs of like a dead cat bounce. I just don't know. It's very hard to say. And I'm just happy with my allocations in more liquid investments at the moment.
Sure. I think that's fair. In terms of actually like being more specific as to why this could be happening. I like this take from T-Row in the YouTube comments. Says, seems as though the Bayc founders are much more active on their Twitter timelines, engaging the base of apes and mutants. The 3D rendering drop to apes helped this mini pump. Long-term outlook still unstable. Okay, I definitely have noticed that first aspect. That was the part that I really agreed with. I've definitely noticed that kind of across the board. I mean, Gaga's obviously stepped back into the CEO role. Even Gordon has been kind of a bit more on the timeline, health permitting. He's not entirely well, but he has been a bit more vocal again recently. And it's just so interesting that human, how would you describe it? Just the human presence on the timeline, routinely kind of directing the vibes, is that valuable? Like, look, maybe there's some other stuff going on as well, but one of my key observations is that is how valuable that human direction of the vibes is. Legendary. Am I missing something there? What are your thoughts?
I think that Kodama, a good friend of the show, Mega Koda holder, Yuga holder, had a very good take on that, saying why I think apes are flying, back to basics, Web3 degen focus, better communication, which you just mentioned, getting rid of things that didn't work, allocating resources back to what matters. In hindsight, it all seems obvious, but it takes balls of steel to realize that you have set the wrong priorities and that what you are doing is not working. Tend to agree with his take quite a lot, but similar to Sammy, it's not something that I'm investing in right now because I just don't know about the longevity of such a sentiment change. Like, is it something like DeGods are moving back to Solana and they are pumping now and might dump? Or is that the start of a more sustainable movement back up? So don't know that, and not in my risk appetite to make a bet on it.
Yeah, look, I think Captain fortunately came in with his opinion in the comments, wanted to share this. If you don't know, Captain and NFT Bark run a show right after this show. Great show for conversing about the NFT market, Coffee with Captain. He said this: several factors, but believe it's compounding factors of stacking Ws since Crypto Gaga took back the reins. But I think this is a very important thing which none of us have mentioned, and I haven't done the maths on it or checked the chain, which obviously we should. He mentions, and timing of the farmers running out of inventory hit perfectly with the shift in sentiment. I just don't think you can truly analyze the NFT market without having the activity of those blur farmers as part of the conversation. I did see a tweet saying that one farmer in particular had like run out of Bored Ape inventory because for whatever reason, I guess they were like buying, selling, and they were all out and hadn't bid again. It could be timed with, Blur and Blast are coming towards its conclusion. I think Blast is expected for May, Blur potentially wrapping up at the same time. I know 100%. So people could be wanting to like wrap up their operations. That's me thinking outside of the box a little bit, but I definitely think you have to have the farmers as part of the conversation when prices go up so aggressively. But Sammy, do you have any take on, like, I saw a few people dancing on the graves of people who always say, oh, but they love to criticize Blur for when the price goes down. If the price is going up so aggressively, what about that? Like, is it really Blur being the problem then? Like, what's the issue? The price can go up, the price can go down. We're seeing that right now. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, without looking at I'm just having a quick look at Blur at the moment. There's a lot that are kind of WETH bids. So I don't know if it is that. Well, I mean, there was a bit of a pump going up with the green sales, but then subsequently there was a dump of about 10 or 15 apes for 17 ETH. And then there's a bit of accumulation. So it's just interesting to see that dynamic. Maybe it is rising up, but I don't know if the Blur farmers are kind of leading that pump. People are FOMOing in, and then they're just going to dump it onto them after. So it's just interesting to see that activity on Blur. From the lending side, without having a look, it's hard to comment. I think T-Row mentioned in the comments that they still have a fair bit of inventory. So there could be a possibility. I don't know if he's referring to the lending market, so Blend, or whether he's referring to the Blur like trading market, the spot market. But yeah, it's very hard to tell. I think without actually having a look at on chain at who's got what inventory, what their traditional trading activity is, it's hard to say which way the direction is going to go. But it does seem to be a bit of a unusual spike upwards in the past like 24 hours.
Yeah, I think that's fair. A couple of other points from the YouTube comments. We've got Tiro saying Matchy also bought up a ton of apes as well. Definitely want to keep an eye on that. And Top Ticker saying, I noticed over the past few weeks how many smaller accounts seem to genuinely be chuffed about getting their first mutant ape or bored ape. And I wouldn't say I've seen loads of that, but I have seen a few people either like getting back in because they feel like, well, I don't know what they feel like, but I think they think that this sentiment is turning. And I have seen a few examples of that. So thank you for that. Top tip. This is a top kicker. That's the name of the account. Trying to get me with the alliteration. Legendary, we're almost at the end of the show. Give us a final take to close out. Bored Apes keep going up, or a little bit of consolidation, or down here?
It's going to be one of those three, isn't it? I think they will go up for a bit, but I don't know how the mid or long term will look like. But I was just thinking on the state of the lending market that Sammy had commented on, that this is so important to factor in. It's just such a good argument, and it's going to get only more complex from here, because obviously a lot of the lending activity is focused on Blur, but you have so many other protocols. You have NFTFi, you have Gondi, and it's not set in stone that market share will forever remain on Blur. And once you have that complexity increasing, you will also have a need for lending aggregators, and then it's going to be even more difficult to read the market if the lending market is important, but it's also diversified across multiple platforms.
Yeah, good point. I had a little tweet yesterday where I said, if you don't know Snow Genesis, you don't really know NFTs, because Snow Genesis is this platform that like aggregates almost all of the NFT lending market, and I'm pretty sure no one ever looks at it. So it definitely has some interesting data kind of hidden in there, which I do look at every now and again. But guys, we hope that has been an interesting show. As always, that is the close of our show this Friday. Thank you so much to my co-hosts Legendary and Sammy. Thank you to our contributors, our potential contributors on stage, Oxy, Tiro, Shotgun, but also all the contributors on YouTube who are doing an awesome job with the comments popping off. Appreciate it. And thank you so much for joining, guys. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday to discuss everything that's happened over the weekend. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care, and we will see you then. Bye-bye.